I've been having problems with my landscapes. Not satisfied with the results, struggling with different elements in the painting, and I've been looking for ways to improve my landscapes and troubleshoot all the problems that I'm having. My strategy was to break it down in small steps to really try to counter those problems and prevent myself, my natural self, from doing the same mistakes over and over again. I made a list of steps to follow, very simple steps, small steps, to make it less overwhelming and also give myself the time to really stop and assess at each step of the way so that hopefully I can improve my landscapes. In last week's art vlog, I was talking about the fact that I took a workshop for landscape painting to help create a more 3D feeling and a sense of depth in the painting. That was very helpful. It was information that I kind of knew, but it more cemented everything together because of the way it was presented. I really enjoyed the workshop, and all that knowledge that was kind of summarized in one place simmered and helped me come up with the list. The first step on my list is to create a sketch. I know it sounds a little bit silly, but I kind of always skip the step of sketching, and I would just start creating a background for the painting, looking at the reference photo and kind of sketching with my paintbrush loosely where I wanted things to be. But it doesn't seem to be working for me for now, so I decided to do a proper sketch. I've got 4 little landscapes here. It's all autumn landscapes, fields. It's nothing very fancy, but there's a lot of different plants and a lot of foliage, so it's a big challenge in many ways. And because I'm gonna paint over these and they're not actual drawings, I'm not putting that much effort into the sketch. I could have done a more detailed sketch like this, like a study of my reference photos, but I'm painting over it. So I just went super fast and in a more expressive way to just place things where I wanted to go. And I specifically paid attention to the color variations within the landscape. So whenever there was a stripe of fields in the horizon that was a different shade, paler, darker, or whatever, I would make sure to sketch that out. Because when you have a landscape like this that is basically all foliage and pretty much all the same color, it gets really overwhelming when you start painting. But by sketching everything out, I know that if there's a stripe somewhere in the horizon, it's because it's a different color. So it's telling my brain, okay, mix something different here. You have to get a color a little bit lighter or darker or more muted or more vibrant depending on where I am in the process. The sketches are very messy, but I don't mind it. It's really more note-taking than a drawing. My second step has to do with colors, color values, tones, and all that. Color is a big problem for me. I tend to create colors that are too dark. It's a problem with acrylic paints that dry a lot darker than when mixed. But one of my issues is that I tend to squeeze out too much pigment out of the colored tubes compared to the white tube. If I were to glob a bit of white on the palette, but put a tiny dot of blue, let's say, in my white, I would get paler colors to begin with instead of adding some white to a pretty big glob of blue, just as an example. Might sound silly, but it's something I've noticed that I do, and it creates waste of paint and also darker colors. I want more pastel-y colors. That's just a personal preference, so it might not apply to you, but to me, I've noticed that all my colors are too dark. And the second thing that I want to focus on with color is how much saturation I put and where I put my saturation. I tend to put saturation everywhere, which makes for a very flat painting. When creating cooler tones in the horizon, very, very desaturated tones in the far horizon, in the background basically, that helps make the more saturated colors in the foreground pop a lot more, creating that depth that I want in a painting. I want to take time to mix my colors right, have cooler shades in the horizon, keep everything grayish and like more blended and fuzzier and moodier and paler. And as I come closer and closer to the foreground, that's when I could put more vibrant colors, keeping the lightest, the brightest colors in the center of the painting, because in the foreground, the complete foreground at the bottom of the page, if you will, colors tend to be a bit darker, more saturated, but a bit darker. But usually the brightest light is somewhere in the middle of a landscape. This is a good example. Here we have good saturation, but it's darker colors. But here we have a band of light colors, light as in the light is hitting that spot, and everything in the background is more grayish, more muted. The third step on my list is to work with a timer. I tend to get impatient. I get in the zone, very focused, and like I keep going to the point where I get really tired, but I keep pushing myself because I want to do more and more and maybe finish it. And I make bad decisions because I get tired and I get impatient, I guess, but more tired than impatient. You know, when you get like too much in the zone and you feel almost dizzy because you've been working at it too long without a break, that's a problem that I have. So I'm gonna work with a timer, give myself 30 minutes, take a 15-minute break, then come back for another 30 minutes, and then take a longer break, as in putting it aside, walking away from it for a while, for a few hours, so that when I come back to it, I have a fresh look on it and I'll hopefully be able to make better decisions. So, color mixing, 30-minute timer. I'm gonna start mixing my paint and really try to keep all those things in mind to get the right colors and the right values, which is really hard. And my first layer of paint is just gonna be blocking out colors and values and different shades of probably the same green, because there's a lot of green, without any texture, because texture can get overwhelming and also busy. I'm trying to do a minimal expressive landscape. I'm gonna start without any texture at all. And I think I'm gonna challenge myself also to not use any pure black or any pure white on that first layer. I know that a lot of painters say never to use pure white or pure black on a finished painting and that it's just not a thing to do. I don't believe in it. I put white and I put black on my paintings, but I tend to overuse it way too much. It's gonna be hard. All that's gonna be hard. Mixing colors, hard. Paler colors, desaturated colors, no texture, walking away from the painting, all that's gonna be hard. Wish me luck. And side note, I wish that seeing my messy sketches is inspiring to you, just because sketching can seem really hard, at least for me. Sometimes it feels intimidating. Not like I don't draw that much. I don't draw accurately that much just because it takes a long time. And sometimes it feels like a drag. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that likes to paint but gets a bit spooked about drawing accurate sketches. It doesn't have to be accurate, and sketching doesn't have to be pretty and artsy and beautiful. It just has to tell you what goes where. So be messy, especially if you're painting over everything. Don't worry about it. Don't judge yourself. The most important thing about sketching is having the right proportions, I find, for each element and putting them in the right place. You know, if like something small is in the center and something large is in the first third, that's what you want to know, so that you have a good sense of like depth and all that. But it doesn't have to be perfect. My sketches are really not perfect. They kind of look like a kid did it. I'm okay with it. I put all the planes of colors that I wanted to put. I think I was pretty good in mixing my colors. They might be a little bit darker than I wanted them to be, but I was very good at keeping the saturation pretty low. Most of my saturation is in the middle ground where most of the light in the reference photo would hit. And I've started to bump up the saturation in the foreground as well, although it's darker, but I'm gonna have a lot more foliage and more bright orange and ochres in this section here. But all this here is pretty muted, so I'm happy about it. And the goal here was to put solid blocks of color, just blocking off sections. And I have trouble not putting any texture because even if I told myself I was just gonna block off colors, I put a bunch of texture in the foreground. There is some little texture here. And I've already put a bunch of clouds in the sky. Even the mountains in the far horizon, they have like texture, but it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I'm learning, so I can't get everything right on the first go. But when I come back to the painting, that's something I'm gonna have to evaluate and see where I need to smooth things out and where I want to keep the texture, because I want that good balance of blended planes or just like minimal planes and a focal point. But now it's time to really step back, step away from it for a long while to reset my brain so that I could go to the next step and make the best possible decisions. It's really hard to learn new ways to do things and to go kind of against your natural way of doing things, because naturally I just want to work with like a dry brush and do a lot of texture. That's where I go naturally. I don't want to lose it completely because I like my natural way of painting in certain areas, but I have to learn how to balance things out so that I get a result that I will really enjoy. All right, break time. I just wanted to show you that the gardening season is officially over. Let me show you. These are my flowers. We got a wee bit of snow, like a whole bunch of snow. Lennox, look at Mama. Oh my God, what have you done? Vicky, come. Let's go. Look at those balls. Oh no, full of snow. Full of snow. Looking at the painting, there's a few things that I don't like already. Mainly, I feel like there's too much texture for a first layer. That's just my first thought. I find the color palette a bit too dark and pretty bland, but the point was for it to be bland. That was the point. But I do think that some of this here is a bit too dark, and I wish that I had done it paler. More like variations of this value. Let me look at the list. Where am I on the list? The next item on the list is to pick a focal point and kind of take notes on what to do. Let me look at the reference photo. Yeah, my focal point somehow is gonna be the orange bushes in the foreground, It doesn't look very defined on the reference photo, so I'm gonna have to adjust it and make it work for me. And I might simplify them a lot, but that's where I want the focal point to be, 2 orange bushes basically. And because I want the painting to have that minimal feel, what I'm looking at is to get rid of a lot of texture. Oh, the mountains, am I gonna rework those? The sky has a lot of texture that I'm not super fond of. Okay, this is my plan. I'm gonna hide most of the painting and I'm gonna work by section, starting with the sky, and I'm gonna move down and down. The operative word here is going to be simplify everything, but also putting all the elements on the photo that are interesting to me. There's a lot of trees that I have to put in, but I've noticed that if I see the entire painting, I tend to like ping pong a lot and go in many different sections, and things get confusing and I make decisions on instinct, and I have to work a little bit against my instinct right now. By blocking off everything and focusing on that one section to try to simplify it, I think it's gonna help me. This is where I'm stopping for today. I progressed a lot. Masking parts of the painting was key. That's something I'm gonna do all the time because it really helped me focus, not get distracted, make better decisions. That's one of the best things I've done. I was hoping to be able to finish it today, but now I have a conundrum. I created a bunch of texture in the foreground and I'm wondering if I love it or if it's too much, because there is some bushes, orange bushes, that I wanted to be the focal point, and now I'm wondering whether all that texture that I created would be distracting or not. So it's really time for me to step away from it, let it simmer, and tomorrow when I come back to it, I'm pretty sure I'll have a better idea of what I could do. I could always stop here and call it finished, because now it's hard to tell because there's a bunch of tape around the painting and it looks very messy, but if I remove this tape, I think the result might be interesting, but I don't know if I'm willing to stop here. I don't know. I really don't know. I might have to scrap all that texture that I did in here and just create a lot more like simple planes in the foreground so that my bushes aren't too busy, but I don't know. I'll figure it out tomorrow. See you tomorrow. What do you think of it, Lennox? What do you think? Is it finished? You tell Mama, please. You're so beautiful. I love you. What do you think, Lucky? Is it finished? Oh, she doesn't like it. Nikki! Oh, you're stretching out. I'm gonna talk to you about the painting, show you the final results. We're gonna talk about it in a minute. First, I wanna talk to you about these big announcements. I'm doing a huge 50% off sale on my website, syndia.ca. If you're curious, if you wanted one but couldn't afford it, now is the time. I'll put the link in the description box. Some of the paintings are even more than 50% off. Like this super large one is $1,250, but I reduced it to $500. And the only exception is these two paintings, two little paintings. They were only 125, so they're not reduced, but these are the only ones that are not reduced. These two, which are pretty small, are reduced. They were $200, they're now $100. This one, it's a large painting. It was $1,350, it's now $500. This one is titled Une chanson pour Jeanne d'Arc, in honor of my grandma. Every painting here, as you can imagine, has a personal story. So if you wanted a painting but couldn't afford it, I feel like at more than 50% off, it might be interesting. A lot of people are shopping right now. Christmas is coming up. I'm running the sale right now, right up until November 29th. So it ends on November 29th. And if you know a musician or an art lover, you can always share my website with them. Thank you so much in advance. Now, let's go take a look at that painting. I thought about it long and hard. I thought about it yesterday, all day today, and in the end, I decided to leave it as is for now. Let's take off the tape together and get a nice visual, and I'll talk to you about my plans. The reason I'm stopping is because I'm really unsure about the texture in the foreground. All this here. Part of me loves it. I really like the nice tones that I got in the browns and beige, in this stripe of olive green here. I think it's very interesting. It's minimal in some way, but there's some element of texture, but it wasn't overworked and it was done in one big swoop. That's really what I'm looking for. Self-assured, big, bold brush strokes, giving that feeling of minimalism, but still being interesting. I think I'm on to something with it. It's not finalized. I feel like there's more polish to be done in the next few weeks or months, but I'm on to something. This purple and white texture in the bottom is supposed to be like just a little sliver of road. And I'm not sure if I should just take it off altogether and just keep that nice olive green in the foreground, giving your eyes a little bit of rest, you know, so that this movement here could shine a little bit more. I had two choices. I could have removed a lot of that texture in the foreground and tried to do those orange bushes, but I wasn't willing to mess around with it just because there's so much of this here that I really like. So I wanted to give myself a couple weeks to think about it. I might add the bushes later on, or I might just leave the painting as is. I'm still unsure. But because I have more landscapes in this series, I could explore different things on other ones while I still think about this one. And the more I look at it, the more I'm thinking that this strip here is really fighting with the barn or the house and the fields and the background, especially this little strip at the bottom. So although I love the purple, I might have to take it off. Because within a painting, I want to have only one main focal point. I know it's not a rule and people do things differently, but that's what I'm looking for. Minimalism, one focal point. And here I feel like there's things happening here that are very interesting, but also there's things happening here that are interesting. So there's a bit of pull, I think. For me, blocking away most of the painting with a piece of paper and focusing on one small area at a time was a game changer. I'm gonna do that all the time from now on. It really helped me keep focused and see one step at a time, basically. The painting is not perfect, but there's bits of it that I love. I love the sky. I love the horizon, the mountains and the fields and forests and the far horizon. I really like how I got everything. There's nothing I would change about it. The fields here and this entire section, I could have the colors be a little bit paler for my own personal taste, just because that's something I'm striving for, like a quieter color palette, things that are more pastel-y. I'm getting there. I can tell you that minimal landscapes are hard, a lot harder than what they look like, because if you look at this, it looks like nothing. A painting that is more detailed and more lifelike is way more impressive, but this is hard. This is really hard for me because I tend to do too much of everything. But progress has been made. That's all I could hope for. I'm really happy about it. If you want more inspiration, watch this one next, and I will see you in just a few days for another one. Thanks for watching.